Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jarl Eliassen and I work for UATP as well as for Ruters in Oslo. So I'm very happy to see that so many people managed to find your way to this cryptic positioned meeting room. Today we'll have a dialogue seminar, and a dialogue seminar means that we want to have a good dialogue with you as an audience. But not only you in the audience, we also have an audience online, so the event is being streamed. So people outside of this room might also pass on their questions by email. And if any of you would like just to post a question by email as well, if you don't like to stand up and have your say for any reason, use the email account. The questions will be passed on to the moderator and they will be addressed. We will take question and answers during the panel discussion. So in order to make sure that we keep track with time, we will not have any Q&As after each presentation. But since this is a dialogue meeting, I'll finish my monologue and I'll give the word to our moderator, José García Fernández, the policy officer from DG Move in the Commission. He has, on very short notice, he's stepped in instead of Axel Folkery, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. So please, José, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jarl, for the kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have to replace my colleague Axel Folkery because precisely he's working on something which is of interest to you. We are finalizing the preparations of the modified directive on clean vehicles, procurement of clean vehicles, and this is set for adoption on the 8th of November. And there are, of course, always last-minute changes to be done, asked by our political masters, the commissioner and his cabinet. So this is why I'm standing here in front of you. So I'm sure that this session on procurement is of great interest to you, and we have a list of very interesting speakers, starting with the CEO of Ruters, which I would like to ask also to join me here on stage, Mr. Bernd Reitan Jensen. Thank you. He studied economy at Norwegian Business School, has been CEO of Ruters since the establishment of the common public transport company for the city of Oslo and Akershus County in 2007. Bernd has held the position of Senior Vice President in Posten Norway for 8 years. And he has also been Chief Executive Officer in the logistic companies TNT Norway and ILX Bus Service. And Bernd Reitan Jensen was named Digitalization Leader of the Year in Norway 2016. So Bernd will outline the basic strategy of Ruters with emphasis on their roadmap and ambitions towards zero-emission mobility, as well as autonomous vehicles. Prior to starting the session, we had an interesting discussion on autonomous vehicles, and he will certainly, with great pleasure, outline the company's strategic vision on this. We will also share some ideas on the roles and possible changes of roles among key stakeholders in today's public service obligation regulated tendered bus operations. And finally, he will share his ideas of how the bus manufacturers could assist in the making the transition speed up. So Bernd, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And very welcome to all of you being here with us today at this dialogue conference of Ruters. And I'm here to share some thoughts and share with you the visions of my company and the way we actually work together with our owners on some very ambitious plans about zero-emission public transport in Oslo and Akershus. And I'm also here as a part of representing the Public Transport Association in Norway, because this is not something these ambitions are not just connected to what we want to do in Oslo and Akershus, which is the capital region. It is also something we do together with our the rest of the public transport companies in Norway. So first of all, just some words about what Ruter and how has the development been in the public transport. But before that, to really understand what goes on in this business now is really, really hard and really, really tough, because I see so many changes the next 10 years that's actually very hard to tell what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. Some would say that it's a total disruption of this business going on. And we, as a PTA, a public transport administrator, we have to understand these changes. So for that reason, I'm traveling much around holding speeches like this, talking about these changes and how we should position ourselves when we know so little about the future as we do right now. When coming here to Kortrijk, I see a lot of linear progressions of the history. You see the coaches actually more or less look the same as they did almost 100 years ago. I'm not sure they will look the same in 10 years. Many of them will change dramatically as the concepts of electrification and autonomous driving will actually roll in over us in the years to come. And how do we act as a PTA in this environment when we know so little? That is something I want to share with you today and invite you all into a cooperation how to handle this. Because the competitors to today's business line are probably not even present in this room. The new business models might occur very, very fast and might change also the way we procure the services. But what we learned in the last 2-3 years to stay relevant to our owners, we actually had to stay relevant with our customers. And to stay relevant with our customers, we don't have to focus on their current needs. We have to understand their future needs. And then we actually have to understand what are we as a PTA here for? Are we here to stuff people into buses and trams and metro coaches? Or are we here to enable our customers to live their lives, to give them the freedom to move? That I think we have to look into and understand as a political tool for our owners. If we fail in this mission, somebody might take this role in just a few years in a way we can't actually foresee right now. This is the way we actually have developed the last years. And as you can see here, public transport in this region has actually grown with, in the suburban areas. In the city center, it has grown with close to 60% since Ruters was founded in 2007. And in the rural areas, we actually grew the business more than 70%. And last year, actually, car traffic in Oslo fell below 2007 level. This is a story which, where a lot of people actually in this business want to hear why is this way. And there, of course, is a lot of explanation to this. Both investing in public transport, increased frequencies, increased toll roads, increased financing of public transport. But when we started in 2007, we were given the target to sort of take all extra need for transportation by public transport in a population that grew with almost 2% a year. And every year since 2007, we actually done that. And for the first time last year, car traffic actually fell. So this is a very good business idea, folks. And the business idea, the core of it, is that we take people from where they are not to a place they really don't want to go. Sometimes in a way they don't really appreciate. So if we continue to do this, can we rely on future success? Or do we have to prepare for change? And I think somebody might come up with an idea, a proposal to the customers, where they actually do take them from where they are to where they want to go in a better way, and even probably at a lower price. How do we then look like as a business altogether? Can you change it again, please? I think we need to find a solution of this, otherwise the rest of the afternoon is going to be spent on you guys.
Can somebody from the IT desk please take care of this?
Maybe there's so many mobile phones in the room that the radio transmission doesn't work. So being in a business where so many things can change, really has been quite challenging for us. And we spent some time on trying to understand what are the megatrends behind this. What are the real changes going on? And in a while I will come back to that. But first of all, that we are going to be more environmentally friendly, be more focused on our footprint. That I think is an open door. But the way customers behave, I'll come back to in a few seconds. But first say that our policy measures, what we are asked to do from our owners, is that public transport together with cycling and walking should take the traffic growth, which I just presented we have been doing for the last almost 10 years. And that fossil-free public transport should be in place by 2020. And that will happen. We have a plan for that. And what we really expect our owners now to do is to set the final target for when be totally emission-free. And my best guess in this room right now is that is going to be somewhere around 2025. After that, we will just not be allowed to buy any public means of public transport that would emit anything. Right now, every 5th car sold in Oslo is an electric car. And the national government already set the target to not to allow any sales of combustion engines after 2025. So this is happening right now. And already today, Oslo has the highest amount of electric cars in the city. So how are our customers behaving? Well, for some of you that perceive that this environment is complex, it is hard to foresee the future, it's dynamic, it's hard to get a clear overview, I can comfort you all that this is probably the least complex day for the rest of your lives. It's going to get more complex and more hard to get the overview. And the customers' expectations, they don't see what was enough for them just a few years ago, that we improved the lines twice a year, we improved the ticketing system twice a year. No, they expect daily improvements that we continue to improve every day, like the rest of the world around them do. Urbanization, that people are moving into cities, is a trend that nobody actually is trying to stop. Sustainability, like I said, a focus on footprint. Nobody foresee an autonomous bus in the future that runs on crude oil. It's all going to be electric. At least that's what we think. And if you look at the customers, they want to have digital appliances. We know how more than 60% on our ticket revenue on cell phones, on smartphones. We have opened all the gates in the system, and we're currently testing a total automatic ticketing system where you just switch on your phone and travel, and you get billed in the fairest way after you've done that. And by doing so, we can get away with all the hardware that we currently use in our ticketing system. And the most happy customers we have are those who just help themselves, that they're not in contact with us in any way. They buy the tickets and they just travel. And they want individual solutions. They don't want to be part of a big compromise that public transport normally is. They just want a solution that fits them. If it's traveling together, that's fair, if the price is good, but they don't want to make all these compromises that we currently have. This is the future like we see it. It's a dam. It's a breaching dam right now. And behind that dam, there are opportunities. But opportunities can be deadly if you're not prepared. And what we're here for today is to prepare, and to prepare together with you. How can we utilize these opportunities? So we're actually working downstream here to make sure that we float when this business actually disrupts. and new services enter our market. And there is no question that these services are going to be based on integrated mobility. I personally haven't seen any solutions to the big underground infrastructure-based systems to handle a lot of people. On the other hand, I see in the other end of these systems, I'm not sure how far an automated bus system will eat into our current system, how many of the timetables that actually will survive in the future. So from our perspective, there is no question. The public transport of the future is flexible, zero emission, and smart. And I think it all has to do in the way we define public transport. I think we have to look into a much broader definition into the span of mobility to be able to find the solutions for tomorrow's customers. I think one way to look at it could be if you're alone, you don't own it, and if otherwise it's shared. If that is a public transport system, that is a way to define maybe how the future will look like. And it also, of course, includes personalized electric mobility or mobility such as bikes and electrobikes. There's a huge growth in demand and use of electric bikes in Norway right now. And I don't think it's only because we have bad weather and a lot of hills. It's a transport system. It's not really a way to exercise. So digitalization and the changes around us has very much to do with big data. And of course, as a PTA, I've said quite a few years already that big data is the future core of the company. We have to find new ways to innovate. We are cutting down our internal process time from years to weeks and days. We look how many solutions we can provide in a week's timetable. And since we started these processes, we have a lot of innovative projects and solutions already implemented. And as a PTA, the reputation and brand will be important. And autonomous and smart technology is not just about autonomous buses. It's also about learning technology. We don't do any coding in software now that doesn't have automatic learning embedded in it. From the simplest way of a self-learning timetable to understanding customer behavior based on their traffic data, incorporating with telecom companies and others. So we can actually forecast tomorrow's or the next hour's need for public transport so we can actually scale our systems and have to cut down in all the capacity that we day-to-day run without passengers. We just can't continue to run these very expensive solutions in the future with so little passengers over so many hours of the day, just because we have to have stiff timetables and a predictable popular system. And like I said, business models, which is this seminar is going to be about. Would any of you buy, when you're buying PCs for your company, take a 2-year-old model because you want to be very sure that it's actually working and do a contract without having the ability to upgrade for 7 + 3 years? Nobody would think like that when technology is changing rapidly. In our sector now, the technology is going to change rapidly for the next years. How could we find ways to procure that with splitting the risk so we can actually get this changed and we can get the benefits earlier? That is what I want to discuss with you. And of course, to do this, we need to develop our people. We didn't develop the culture of the company, and we have a huge social challenge when all these bus drivers and people working with automation, which people are working positions that's going to get automated in the next 10 years. How do we treat them? They're responsible, so we don't have any unforeseen political effects of this. And of course, we've said that we're going to procure a fleet of autonomous buses and test them in different environments in Oslo. We already have done some testing already. Now we're going for a bigger scale. And of course, even though these vehicles today behave like puppies, they're afraid of cats and leave. You can see the teeth, you can see the potential. And as I see it, this is the future of much of the bus industry as soon as the drivers are getting replaced. And we are prepared to use our government marketing and procurement power to buy these new technologies now. So we actually go to the market and ask for tomorrow's technologies so that the future doesn't arrive too late. My experience is that the market to a long range has tried to sell us yesterday's technology. But then we don't change the world the way we want to change it and get to a more environmentally friendly industry. Because otherwise, we might see that our current competitors, the private car, will actually get there before us. And we use a big competitive advantage over the car when it comes to our environmental footprint. So this is the kickoff of the session. I really hope for many interesting questions. And we're really here to try to work together as a team with this industry to try to get moving into the future together and not sit here and wait until we're outcompeted by somebody we don't know today. So thank you for your attention so far.
Thank you, Bernd, for this overview and insight into the strategic plans of Ruters regarding electrification and also autonomous driving in public transport. I think from this excellent high-level overview, we now go deeper into the ins and outs of procurement, also from a speaker from Ruters, in this case, Mr. Kåre Rieseng, who is head of procurement development at Ruters and has worked at the company since 2013. He has a master's degree in transport planning and has worked for over 20 years at several PTOs and PTAs in both manager and specialist positions. In recent years, Kåre has worked mostly with business models for public transport obligation contracts, common requirements for buses in tenders, and bus tenders in general. So very naturally, the focus of his presentation will be on procurement models and challenges of using these in a time of transition.
Yes, thank you. Do we need to rethink existing bus procurement models to meet these near future changes? Well, I think so. Today's model, at least in the Nordic countries, is based on that the PTO buys buses for the whole contract period for 7 to 10 years. The problem with that is that if the operator puts a new bus into production in the city and the PTA wants to change that bus after 4 years, then there is no guarantee for the operator to put this bus into operation in another city. So there is a risk that the bus will be scrapped before potential lifetime, or that it will be sold to a very low price. So the PTO wants predictable contracts that reflects the investment they have made. And the PTA wants flexibility to meet these dynamic market changes, new technology. And then that could lead to a conflict of objectives. So I think that if we're going to solve this, it's not necessary to only look into the possibilities in the contract between the PTA and the PTO. We need to look at the whole supply chain and all these actors inside there and what service they are providing to each other. So one idea I'm going to present for you today, and that's not a new idea. We're going to hear a little bit about it later today also. And that is that the PTA buys the buses and the PTO only operates them. If we do that, I think we will get increased lifetime because the buses are not depending on the contracts. And you will then get lower risk for the PTO. And there will also be more second-hand buses for low-density traffic. But I think a local PTA will buy buses based on local demands. So you will probably get less standardization, less volume. And the PTO cannot decide anything about the vehicle specification. And you will have a form of local fleet management because the PTA, it's not so easy for the PTA to move these buses to other PTAs or a PTO. So here's another idea, or actually it's a variant of the same idea. Today buses, they are bought, they're purchased, they are financially leased, or they are operational leased. But is it possible to provide a more flexible, more dynamic, on-demand leasing model in addition to this? But if we are going to have this more flexible model, we need larger volume than today, because it could be difficult for an operator to move vehicles from one depot to another depot inside a country. So the operators need to have greater possibilities to move buses inside the country or inside the Nordic countries, or to a certain extent also inside Europe. And also it would be even better if the operators could move buses to other operators. Then we could make a large enough volume to have a more flexible system. So, will it be possible for someone to provide a service to the PTO that includes vehicles, maintenance, maybe also energy, and then the PTO should have great flexibility to make changes to vehicles during the contract period. And to reduce the risk for the PTO, we should make a more open and transparent system so that the risk could be distributed to the PTA. Or, in the opposite way, it could also be the PTA that has this leasing contract and provides this. And then we could look at this example. If the operator puts a new bus into operation and it lasts for 4 years, and then the PTA calls and say, I want these new buses, these perfect electric buses that are much better than the ones today. The PTA could just stay calm, the PTO, because he could call the leasing company, and the leasing company takes back the buses, find new buses to this city A, and then maybe there's a need for these buses in city B. And for the last 3 years, CTC has a very great deal running and operating these buses. Then we could get increased lifetime for vehicles. We could get more standardization. We could get reduced financial cost. And also, there will be a fleet of second-hand buses. And you will get much larger volume per order and lower risk for the PTO. But of course, we know that non-attractive vehicles, they will not be released anyway. And there will be less possibilities for the PTA to ask for local vehicle demands. So, who could be the providers of such a model? Could it be a group of PTOs, companies in the finance sector? They already do this. A group of PTAs, vehicle manufacturers, they are also into leasing today, vehicle sales organizations, or other private companies. I hope that you later today could help us with the answer. Is this possible? Is this a business idea? Will this help us to get a faster implementation of new technology? Thank you.
Thank you, Kåre, for this very, very interesting insight into procurement models. So I think that we are all learning from you today. Our next speaker is Mr. François Vauxion from RATP in Paris. He is a graduate of the École spéciale de mécanique et d'électricité, School of Engineers, and he is a Master of Business Administration at Paris Sorbonne University. After 1 year at the MET headquarters as Air Force meteorologist, he joined RATP in 1995 to work on signaling maintenance system ATO-ATP. He has then worked as a team manager in the electric engineering department for the metro and light rail RER system, signaling system. Then he moved to the infrastructure department as signaling system buyer for civil and metro station equipment. Then he moved to rolling stock as a bus buyer. And François Vauxion was appointed in 2016 bus fleet purchase, rolling stock manager and innovation delegate. He will deliver the core message that the RATP is positioning itself as an integrator and follows the objective of benefiting from the standardization and interoperability of running systems for its fleet of buses and its charging infrastructure, both gas and electricity. The globalization of projects and the integration of systems by the engineering teams reinforce the internal skills and perpetuate the integrated maintenance plan of the company. Mr. Vauxion, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we will have the same conclusion, flexibility, but it's another story. So I really like this photo because a lot of manufacturers are on it. It was this photo has been shooted 2 years ago in Paris, and a lot of manufacturers were present at this first presentation. A lot of change happened for years now, and it's a new era started. I will organize my presentation in 3 parts. Just an overview of Bus 2025, but we already see that yesterday, so I will be very short about that. But I resume and I focus my point of view about this part on procurement only, of course. The second part is how we are making tendering right now, and the 2 keystones of the process right now. It's life cycle cost and functional specification. But we are professionals, so I will reduce probably this part too at the very essential word about that and life cycle cost, for example. And I will develop the third part, how to manage a transition, to give you and to try to open the debate about how we could rethinking the bus procurement model to be much more flexible, as you already said, and from the starting point right now, and how to improve our model in the future to be much more flexible and to be open-minded, face to new organization between PTO, PTR in France, but not only in France, Paris not the France, and not only, and for other model in Europe. So we will try to develop, maybe together in a second part of this meeting, how we could rethink and propose new way of procurement. So just an overview, the fleet in RATP, 400 buses in operation, and to do that, we are buying 1 bus per day right now to upgrade and to renew the fleet each day. So this is the procurement right now we are doing, 1 bus per day. The fleet, but you have already probably seen this slide yesterday, so I stay just here. A global overview of your plan. We wish to upgrade the fleet into 800% electric vehicles and 20% in gas. We have already done a lot of contract about gas because vehicles are available right now. So we are doing this roadmap today with a big contract about gas. So the plan is already nearly contracted right now. For electric bus, of course, it's not the case. We have only 50 buses in operation, and we expect to have 100 next year and another year. But it could be slower in electric mode than in gas, of course. So an overview of the roadmap to reach the target in 2025 with 80% of the fleet in electric and 20% in gas. This is a global overview and the general objective of your plan. Okay. to reach the transition, 50% reduction of RATP greenhouse emissions. This is the target it's the position of France to reduce the impact of fossil oil in the warm house. Okay, the first line is in operation for 1 year, and it works very well. Right now, we reach the standard of availability and maintainability, so it's very good now, and we wish to accelerate the transition. Second part of my presentation, some principles of how we are making tendering right now. So, of course, it's an operation in project mode with the Greater Paris Authority, Île-de-France Mobility in Paris. It's a new name of another syndicate of transport, which organizes the transport. It's a PTA, and we have a lot of talk with this organization to make the tender. It's what we are doing. But for a long time, in fact, it's an organization in project with the region, the mayor of Paris, the district, and RATP for a long time summarize all the needs and organize the tender, in fact. So we have an industrial policy to follow with a manufacturer and with the industrial world, suppliers too. So we have an industrial policy, and we try to identify and express needs between all partners in the Greater Paris region. And we follow for years, 10 years now, 15, UETP recommendation, tender structure recommendation in UETP. So we are ready to purchase and instrument the European tender. So we try to maintain a competition between manufacturers, and we follow and we quote performances with life cycle costs, but not only with specification, and we are quite exigent about that. We follow thousands of specification. It's maybe too much, but we try to reduce to be much more functional in your needs now. And we follow, of course, policy, different policy of energy, environment, and we are close to the public authority of transport, and now it's represented by Île-de-France Mobility. So we follow the direction of what we need to reach as target, and they are much more precise now. So the contract structure, a part of specification, of course, and this is all the market clauses and specification. So a financial part, life cycle cost as the keystone of the system to have a strong commitments through the manufacturers. They should follow absolutely all the commitments, and there are a lot of penalties if manufacturers failed into this commitment. So we are quite exigent, one more time, to follow all the needs and specifications. And another part, it's about specification, and we check, we test all the time the manufacturer and the real life, between the real life and the contracted commitments. So, third part, advantages of French procurement. It's a pretentious title, but what we are trying to do is to have a big project. I don't know if it's well organized, but it's organized for a long time to reach a target in 2025, to have a fleet completely out of gasoline, and with gas and electric mode. So we are doing that, and RATP is a system integrator. We are still a quite whole company with engineering, maintenance, operation. Everything is linked into just one company with buses in operation, railways, light rail, railways and metro. So we are a global company, a multimodal company, and it's very important in this kind of project because we are doing this new area with a little bit the same organization as before, because we wish to upgrade the fleet totally. It's not just a line, just a depot. It's a complete fleet of 25 depots in a small area, quite small area, Paris, and the first ring and the first suburb. So it's not very wide. So we have skills today with the engineering team and a maintenance integrated into the company, and we are a grid. Because we transform electricity, we have a strong, we transform the grid from the French electricity grid into, for the metro, for example. So we have a lot of synergy between metro, railways, and we try to find a new synergy between railways and bus. So, so this project links together railways and bus. So we are looking for standardization. We have tested a lot of rolling stocks and charging station, IT systems for 3 years now, and we reached the standard and interoperability between systems because we operate different kind of bus in the same depot, and all buses moves a lot. During 1 year, 1/3 of the complete fleet is moving into depot. So we need absolutely interoperability, standardization between components and rolling stocks. Of course, we should be much more flexible in the future because there are a lot of the financing of the public transport is moving. The time, the lifespan of the route should reduce into 4, 5, 6 years, so we should be much more flexible. We have a complete fleet. We are managing a big fleet, but we should respond to the authority much more precisely, and so with different kind of financing, with different kind of systems, IT system, for example. So we introduce in your own contract some option to be much more flexible, to respond in real life after the contract. We expect, and we did that with a kind of options to be much more flexible. As so, battery leasing and IT systems, but why not a bus in lease? Why not for? But it's not the case today. But we are thinking about that to follow the trend. We cannot be outside the market. So we have Ruters, and your Ruters is an integrated company, but we have in mind that the world is changing very fast, and we should be much more flexible. So I will finish by the global positioning. RATP is positioning itself as an integrator company and follows the objective of benefiting from standardization of the fleet of buses and its charging infrastructure, gas and electricity, the globalization of projects at big scale, and the integration of systems by the engineering teams reinforce the internal skills and perpetuate the integrated maintenance plan of the company. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, François Vauxion, for your insights into procurement at RATP. Our next speaker is Gerard Helber from Vervoerregio Amsterdam. He is the program manager of the Zero Emission Mobility in the Amsterdam region. His main task is to manage the transition towards zero emission mobility for the metropolitan area of Amsterdam. And in his presentation, he will introduce his company's transition plan towards zero emission mobility including the development of the Amsterdam-Meerlanden concession, implementing the use of a large number of electric buses. The floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gerard Helberg. Also, hello to everybody who is watching from YouTube. I saw the link just a minute ago. I work for the PTA of Amsterdam. We call ourselves the Vervoerregio Amsterdam. I would like to tell you something about the transmission towards zero-emission mobility in our area. Yes. This is my outline or the table of content. I will first tell something briefly about who we are, then our call for sustainability in the Netherlands. After that, the shift to zero-emission buses in one of our concessions. We call it AML, but it's short for Amsterdam-Meerlanden. I will explain that later. Then the transitions towards zero-emission mobility. I heard it before the term today of Brent. And the challenges we met during realization or setting up our plan. Good. I do. Good. We have 4 concessions in our country. This is where we are located here in Amsterdam, and we have 4 concessions. One of them is Amsterdam, of course. We have Zaanstreek, Waterland, and AML. And AML is the one that I will get to later, because that's the one that really has a big shift towards zero-emission buses. These are some figures. We have 1.5 million people living in our region, about 7 million tourists a year. Yeah, that's a lot. And almost 1 million jobs. So what about the call for sustainability in the Netherlands? After the increased momentum of sustainability in the Netherlands, many parties stepped in with their own solution, of course, often driven by maximizing their own profit, which is not a bad thing, of course. But it had some side effects. Parties had a single technique perspective and often not very transparent in the costs. So we felt the need to do some studying, and we wanted to know what was the current insight into experiences and effects, the costs and benefits of technologies, of course, and integrating future technologies. This is the result of our study, and everybody knows it. These are a couple of options, things you can do if you want to make your fleet more zero emission. So we thought about the shift to zero emission buses in one of our concessions, and that was Amsterdam-Meerlanden. And we decided to have 6 goals. And the first was, of course, the most premium one. There's the customer journey. We learned yesterday that customers have a face, so we should not talk about passengers anymore, but customers. And we wanted to make sure that the customer journey is central. So whatever technique you choose, whatever you want to do with your fleet, the customer has to be at the first start of everything. Then, of course, we want high quality of the product, stimulate growth. We want flexibility as well, but not only in the buses we use or the techniques you use, but also in routing. The tender should contribute to our policy goals such as accessibility, safety, and durability, of course, and it should be affordable. Affordable is a very important thing. You can want everything or set high goals, but it has to be affordable. So we had a whole schedule of requirements, and we thought about how should we work through our emission goals. And we found a very strategic and strong partner, and it was the Schiphol Airport, of course. They have big ambitions concerning sustainability. Because of that ambition, we included ZEP demands, zero-emission bus demands, in our schedule of requirements. That also led to a very good offer by the one who won. That was Connection, of course. And at the end of the concession period, This was also a very a good criteria. If you wanted to win this tender, you had to increase the amount of emission per traveled kilometer, not only during the bid, but also during the whole concession period. In that way, you can take a look on how your emission will drop per kilometer during the concession period. And this concession period is set from this year, December, till 2027. So it will run for 10 years and has an option to expand for 5 years. All right, so what was this result? The result was a very good transition schedule set by Connection of Transdev, that's called right now. You see here at the start, 2018, they will introduce, well, 100 electric buses in our area. They will use opportunity charging. We'll have 2 locations, Schiphol Airport, of course, and Amstelveen bus station. And then, after some learning period, we will go to the next area, that is 2021, and then the second batch of electric buses will be deployed. There is a little bit of diesel buses still running for the during of the period. But if you look at the usage, and when you look at who will be moved with zero-emission buses during this period, it will be 95% of all the people who will use the public transport in this area will be used by riding a zero-emission bus. So that is a pretty good goal we had. For the 2018 charging facilities, we need this: 21 fast chargers, 43 overnight chargers, 8 fast chargers on Schiphol, and for the pod cars, we also need some chargers. So after the zero emission ambitions in this concession, Amsterdam-Meerlanden, we also thought about, okay, so this is what we got done for this concession. How about the rest of our area? And we had some trends that affected that plan. First of all was the falling of the European topic of clean bus deployment. We call it the execution of the Green Deal, and it took form in the bestuursakkoord ZEP. That's the first one. That's administrative agreement of the regional public transport. We have a strong focus of all the PTAs now, so everybody's working together. The second trend that affects how you can manage your zero-emission mobility fleet is smart mobility. If you think about how we will design the public transport system in maybe 5 or 10 years, you have to think about how your strategic infrastructure. So there's also the reason why we speak of zero-emission mobility and not just bus. And the third one is, of course, we need exchangeable and strategically located infrastructure when you start to charge your bus. Also, the possibilities of an e-hub, of course, should cross your mind when you think of this. Now, how can we reach that? Well, we have to have commitment of all stakeholders. We need transparency on costs, because you have to realize if you want to achieve these goals, somebody will have to pay for them. We have to have responsibilities about agreements. If you make an agreement, stick with it, do your part. But of course, we have to be flexible again, and not only about which technique you choose, but also with whom you will set goals together. Maybe you can have a part of people in this year, and next year you will find another coalition to reach your goals. Just stay focused. And of course, again, it should be manageable and affordable. So, what are our ambitions? Well, this is actually a national ambition, and we just embraced it, just like the rest of the Netherlands. In 2025, all new buses will be zero emission, and they will use 100% renewable energy. So, in 2030, all buses should be zero emission, no more combustion. To realize that, we need exchangeable and affordable charging infrastructure. We cannot have that one operator drives in Amsterdam Central Station and cannot charge their bus, or whoever it may be, maybe a shared car. And we need to create synergy with other transport models. Just like I said, think about e-hubs. Maybe we can, shared biking is also a big issue in Holland. Maybe you can recharge your electric bike. Who knows? Challenges we face. And this is actually the last slide, so bear with me for a moment. We need a balance, of course, between efficiency within concessions and investments. That also is the, it should be an affordable system. If you want to change your system into a zero emission one, you will have to realize that you need more buses and more drivers. So somebody has to pay for them. Also look at the local regulations. There are some tunnels that don't allow electric buses to drive in. So please be aware of that. Yeah, like I said, aware on cost of zero emission. And the last one, because I don't really like reading out my sheet, because you can all read it, is keeping up with the state of the art. And that is all about flexibility. We heard it a couple of times now from former speakers, and we really should realize that if you want to make this change possible, don't be very stiff and go like that and let all the other opportunities pass by, but seize them and try to learn from your mistakes. That's it.
Thank you, Gerard, for giving us a concrete example of how it works in one of the areas for which your company is responsible. And I would like then to call upon the previous speakers, except I think one of them, to join me here up on the stage for the panel discussion. And in addition, I would also like to call upon Lars Johansson, and Peter Kremens, and Per Als. Thank you. Okay, we are complete. I would like to introduce also the panelists which have just joined us now. I will start with Lars Johansson from ASEA, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, who is from Volvo. He is chairman of the ASEA UITP Coordination Committee. He is head of global marketing of Volvo buses and has been in the bus business for more than 35 years, and has held numerous positions within sales and marketing, and also within the UITP and ASEA in a number of committees, just to name a few, industry committees since 2002, so 15 years. UITP bus committees, standardization charging system committee, UITP Sort Committee, UITP Tender Structure Committee, and then ASEA Bus and Coach General Managers Committee, and, as I said, Chairman of the Coordination Committee. Then I would like to introduce Peter Kremens, member of CLCCR, the International Association of the Body and Trailer Building Industry, and head of strategy at VDL. Peter started to work in the bus industry also many years ago, in 1983, and has held various functions such as worldwide service manager at DAF Bus International, engineering manager at DAF Bus International, purchase director VDL Bus and Coach, and in the last 5 years he has been responsible for strategic pre-development at VDL, enabling transport solutions. And in the past 4 years he has been very active to establish and help to create standardization for heavy-duty conductive charging. And then Peter Als, senior transport specialist at the European Investment Bank. But Peter Als has held many positions in the public transport prior to joining the EIB. In Copenhagen, he is an economist, has worked at the Danish Ministry of Transportation in the 1980s, and also has held the position of Director of Finance of the Movia Public Transport Authority, and has been involved in the public transport sector internationally. And at the EIB, he is in the Project Directorate Urban Mobility Division, where he has a focus on clean transport and specifically clean buses. So I will start the round with one first question. We have heard very interesting insights from several of you, including starting with the CEO of Ruters, Bernd. And I would like to ask the other panelists how the industry and both operators and manufacturers can support technology transitions like the ones Ruters has described. Maybe a question to start with for ASEA, if you would dare. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now, I think we are prepared to support, and I mean, but there are a lot of differences in the discussions now, high and low. So one issue that we have discussed now within ASEA, UITP, and the European Commission is, let's say, first of all, financing and funding of such buses. Are we supposed to have a system of, let's say, high-level funding or financing like in China or in the United States? We don't have that in Europe. So that is maybe a first question that I might have, so to say. We had some discussions earlier with the European Investment Bank about that. But so that, let's say, is ongoing. Then secondly, I think that this discussion about price and life cycle cost must take into consideration. And we have been discussing this for a very long time, that let's say green public procurement parameters must be taken into consideration, which is not the normal case in normal tenders in Europe. So here we are a little bit hesitant why that cannot accelerate the discussion. And I think we are a little bit blocked there. And I mean, also we are discussing the emissions, the CO2, the noise, and the indirect cost that must be taken in consideration. So there are, let's say, a little bit two first parameters. I'm not sure it will answer all the questions, but there are two fundamentally very important parameters that we have not concluded, and we are not done in Europe what we want, so to say. So that is maybe a first answer.
Thank you very much for your reaction. Maybe the same question to you from the perspective of CLCCR. What are your views on this topic?
Yeah, the CLR members are the members which are not in the ASEA, so these are the independent bus manufacturers, and yeah, these people are already playing an important role in the startup of this, because the most buses running at the moment are from this group. And we found models to implement already fleets in the market by cooperating and making the transition with partners. Amsterdam is one, Eindhoven, but there are also bigger projects in Poland and in France where we found routes for financing these startup projects already with the partners itself. So it's a matter of being very innovative and play a role there and help the people to the transition.
Thank you. Financing and the EIB have been mentioned, so it's very naturally that I would like to, and we would like to hear your views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for having the opportunity to be here, where it's seldom that I'm in a room with so many competent customers for the bank. I'm now in the money business, and the green issue for the bank is, of course, taken from the European Commission, focus on clean technology and how to go faster than we otherwise would go. We have for a couple of years had the Clean Transport Facility, which is a program where we try to facilitate a transformation. The bank typically deals with quite large projects, and so from a bus perspective, I'm a busman myself, we have the problem that the buses are so darn cheap that it's difficult to get the size really up in scale, and therefore I think it is very comforting here to hear that both manufacturers, operators, and authorities will get together so that we can get a critical mass. The cost of the vehicle from a total cost perspective is only about 10% or something like that, but it's money up front and it's extremely visible, and that's exactly where the European Investment Bank can come in. We have patient money, we have relatively cheap money, and we even have them with a green lining in the sense that we, to some extent, we help out the Commission in doing some of their grant projects, also administering them. Grants is something you get and you don't have to pay it back. When you get money from me directly, I want them back. But so this type of blending where we can go in with some money as a grant and then patient money, 12 years is not a problem at all. That's where we can go in.
Thank you. Now that we have heard the views of the manufacturers and the bank, let's play the ball back to the operators. What's the view of Amsterdam and then Paris, and of course you have then the last word. There are more microphones there, but I like the sharing economy.
Okay. We're not the operator, but the authority as well. I think what we have achieved in Amsterdam-Milan is an example of how the industry can make it flexible. When you looked at the schedule of the introduction of all the zero-emission buses, you saw that in 2021 there will be a new second batch. But the buses that move people from 2018 until 2021 are being leased, and after that it will be deployed somewhere else. And you need, of course, a big operator to realize that. But that's a good way to conclude the shift and to see how it works, how industry and operators, and it benefits the traveler in the end.
Yes, prices of electric bus are, of course, an electric bus is much more expensive now, even in life cycle cost. But we expect that the electric bus will reach the hybrid bus very soon, and maybe in few years a diesel life cycle cost. So we expect that, of course, with the bus itself, but we should add infrastructure, and it's another cost. But I would like to say that we have tested a lot of vehicles for years, and all are doing 180 kilometers, so it works. So it's a question of time in technology, but we could expect that the price will join diesel bus maybe in 5 or very soon. in fact.
Well, I'm glad to hear that things are happening and that things are changing, but I'm still concerned whether they are changing fast enough. Ruters, we're a platform company, basically. We represent the customers actually buying and wanting these services, and we are also a political tool trying to provide these services to make sure that my owners can control the land use and things like that. But if we're not able to provide a service that the customers want, we'll get irrelevant with our owners before we actually know it. But the good thing is that we don't own anything. So we don't have to take a risk in owning infrastructure, for instance. We are just there to provide the service. And I'm curious whether I, in 5 years, will buy the amount of service from this industry that we are currently doing. Because there might be other players out there. It might be car sharing companies. There might be the auto industry that comes up with shareable vehicles with, can hold from 4 to 10 passengers. The timetables, might go away to a large extent, and at least in the outskirts first, might even in the closer into the city centers as the time moves on. And will this industry be able to follow that trend and come up with solutions? Or will it still sit here and discuss who's going to pay? Because there will be other actors out there that will invest huge money in this. And I think platform companies is my best guess right now. But we really don't know. And that's what we're here today to listen to you guys.
And what, in your views, would be... you would like to come in again? Because otherwise I would go into...
Yeah, I think it's a very good discussion. And it's needed, of course. If I then go a little bit deeper into the, let's say, the daily business, first of all, we have, as I said earlier, we have this concern about this discussion about the green public procurement. And I mean, we have to take the indirect cost for the society into consideration, noise and health and all that, because we as taxpayers, we have that cost. So it's, let's say, it's the business model that must be changed, and we have discussed that, Mark, many times here. So that is one parameter, so to say. Then when we talk about the cost of electric buses now, which is, let's say, double to diesel, just about, approximately, then you have to take into consideration the life cycle cost over 8 years. And according to our calculations now, it's only 10, 15 or maximum 20% more expensive, depending a little bit how you treat the environmental cost and so on. So the life cycle cost over 8 years for a traditional contract is not that much costly, so to say. And then from the industry side, I mean, we are very happy now to let's say, sell the product. First of all, a battery contract, that is not a question any longer. And then to so to say, sell our products per kilometer. That would, I think, help the whole equation here. So then, let's say, we take the risk. You buy services for a price per kilometer according to a certain contract. And I mean, that is also a little bit a new type of doing business that we are very happy to support now, today, here.
If you were to name just 3 key barriers which lay ahead of us in this transition, which would you name, all of you?
Yeah, I think we have also in your presentation the standardization of a charging system. That is another area that can be a little bit, as you said, blocking a little bit the situation. So here we have a job going on. So standardization of charging system is important, I would say. But then I think focus on life cycle cost and this environmental indirect cost. That I think there you have 3 good areas to work on.
Yes, please.
So don't forget that a large part of the risk is under control of the manufacturer, and when we do a contract with a manufacturer, we transfer the risk by commitment to it. So during the lifespan, with through life cycle costs, we transfer the risk, a part of the risk, to the manufacturer. So the operator could run without a big part of the risk, but some of the part.
Your views, maybe, on this?
Well, my colleague over here already said exchangeability of the charging system. That's a very important issue as well. If you want to achieve a good transformation into the zero emission system, we should do it all together. And Brent called it a platform company. You cannot do this kind of development on your own. You should do it together, and I think that's the only way you can make each other and the whole system better and stronger. So the barrier is doing it by yourself, trying to invent the wheel. I don't know if that's a Dutch expression, but if you try to do it by yourself, you will hit a wall and then start looking around. Somebody please help me, but then you're too late.
So there's definitely an upside to sharing more risks. Maybe it's time also to ask the audience for some questions. One first hand over here. If you would please introduce yourself and your affiliation.
Yes, my name is Mark van Houten from Transdev headquarters in Paris, so the company where Connection is part of. Thank you very much from Ruters for your very comprehensive presentation, but I'm getting goosebumps from that presentation. You know that, and thanks to Francois, who explained very well that the knowledge, the competence is with the operators. And of course now at the electric buses, we do that together with the manufacturers. So we have developed the system in Eindhoven and also for AML with VDL. So we cannot do this alone, we have to do that together. But as a PTA, if you start buying buses yourself, you may finance them, that's not a problem for me. But when an operation should work, and an operator has to present timetables and the way he will manage the operation, he should be able to choose the vehicles who are more who are suitable for that operation. And at the same time, he should choose how he is managing the maintenance. It can be all different kinds. It can be with a maintenance contract. It can be in own workshops. But only then you can have a very efficient operation. So this is my message about this. And now looking to the PTAs, we see that there's an evolution. So you already made some tender conditions which helping us. But my thing is, and now I want to have your opinion about this, we still tender out in the Netherlands. I'm very much involved in the Netherlands because it's the country which is moving the fastest. Is that you tender out just like with the diesel, mainly, meaning that you have 4 to 5 months to reply. And I think we have to look a bit to the light rail business. We need at least 1 year to study what is the best solution, to look at the same time where can we have opportunity charging on the circuit, having also agreements with other authorities that you can do it there, having agreements also with other authorities for getting the permits for the supply lines to that network, and also with the energy suppliers. And I think the best placed part in that circuit is in fact the operator, together with manufacturers and with other authorities. And so what is your opinion about this?
Well, that's, I heard that remark yesterday from you as well. And I thought about it, and I agreed actually not to extend the tendering period, but one of our goals within this transition program is to develop a map actually where we can place all the strategical loading points in our concession areas, and to make sure that if we tender out again, we have, together with all the municipalities and all the other governments, we have a very, very firm belief that if a PTO wins the concession, it can actually work towards creating the charging system and start just as good as it gets at a 10 December or which day it is in Holland. So I think it's a role for the PTA to make sure that all the other governments and all the other manufacturers work together and set it as a requirement actually in the tendering process.
Any other reactions from the panel?
We are here today actually to try to inspire that value chain so we don't have to take more responsibility for it. We're not there that we really want to buy infrastructure and buses. We actually want to push that out to a functioning market and that those roles actually can come back and so deliver on our objectives. And those objectives you see here, they're quite aggressive when it comes to zero emission, same as in Amsterdam. So we need more inspired and forward-leading market out there. And I think it's even though I can understand while the market asks for more predictability, the development of technology and our customers ask for higher speed and provide less predictability as the technology continues to develop. And I often said that politicians can eat business for breakfast, but technology can eat politicians before they get out of bed. So what's happening right now is that technology actually might take lead in this. Yeah. And then, to ask for longer tender periods, to be asked for eternal tendering periods.
Yeah, well, if I was saying that we should take a role as a PTA to organize such grids, not buying them, but just to make sure that when the PTO starts at the end at the start of their concession period, they can have they can use the charging grid as they want, as they need. And of course, to develop such a strategical charging map, you have to work together with all the other governments, also the industry and the PTOs.
And of course, we promise that we will have to look in the way we work as well, and look at carefully on how we process and how we tender, and that's why we're here. There might be big changes in the way we do business to be able to acquire, to accommodate what we're here looking into as when it comes to changes.
This is a truly interactive session, and I'm grateful for a few questions we have received by email. A question from Sylvain Aon from UITP. Are the bus system approach put forward by RATP and the fleet flexibility proposed by Ruters compatible? In other words, how to make the fleet flexibility concept fit with an e-bus system approach? Maybe the two companies which have been addressed in the
I
question.
would like just take a look about how we charge the bus. We expect to charge the bus with an overnight charging system on a private depot. So we don't have, for instance, the problematic of making infrastructure work outside the depot, like you, for example. So we try to be independent and in a private location as a depot. So we have less interfaces with the outside world. It's what we expect to do with overnight charging and not opportunity charging like many operators use it in Europe, for example, for the moment, at present now.
No, I think there's, if you wander around these halls today, you don't see a silver bullet solution to all problems. And you can't see any transition happening in overnight. So you actually have to learn in the next decade how to handle this transition from one technology to the other. And no solution is complete. I think one of the biggest questions and hardest questions to answer today is how fast are we going to have overnight charging actually being able to sustain a bus operation which is something in the neighborhood of what we do today without actually being too costly. If you can do that, when it comes to rolling out fast charging infrastructure in the city center, which is very, very demanding, it could look quite differently. So, but we have to start in a way. we can't just wait for the final and best solution. We have to find a way to move on. And even though I hope that the technology will take us past this very, very extensive and costly infrastructure that have to be embedded in a city center.
A question asked by Karine Ponsford with no affiliation indicated. Some say that the vehicles are not the issue for the deployment of e-bus, but it is more about the difficulty to set up the required charging infrastructure. Regulation, barriers, cooperation with the energy sector. What are your views on that? And what could be done regarding procurement to include also those costs and risk management?
Today we separate the procurement of buses and the procurement of infrastructure. Just an example about gas buses. We have already done a lot of contract to buy biogas vehicles, and the infrastructure are not ready to operate them. So today it's easier to buy buses than to do works in a dense city, and we have much more delay and about infrastructure works than in bus deliveries. So the question is about infrastructure. It gives us the delay of the operation for us right now about gas, only gas, because we did that first before electric.
So maybe the two big projects we have, we both cooperate with our partners there very closely, and we really integrate the development of the bus and the infrastructure, and the installation of the infrastructure and the testing was part of the project, and even the maintenance and the repair and maintenance we have with these partners is completely included in 10 years, and also the batteries. So we really as an industry took there the lead to make it an easy transition for the people, and we take the care of these three systems as one responsibility.
On the on what it takes, I think that the issue of organization is very important. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of big actors, but they act under very local circumstances, and there's also maybe a tendency in the industry that we want to be slightly different from our neighbors. That may be worth thinking about giving up a little bit. Then I think a good thing about the risk issue is that the basic technology is getting to be stable with electric buses. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that we would have come to where we are now. But with a new organizational model, you get new interfaces, you get new needs for interface management. And no matter how good a contract you make, when a bus doesn't drive in Oslo, it's your problem, because you entered the contract with whoever didn't perform. So therefore, there will be an enormous focus on stability here, and thereby that we are able to put together a watertight organization. In Movia, my old company in Copenhagen, they are also on the way to do electromobility. And they've taken advantage of a particular program called Elena, where they get help in setting up also the organizational structure in putting in more electromobility. So I think it's really worth our while to go in and come to grips with that. I was so lucky to be part of the group which implemented the new tendering system in Copenhagen in the beginning of the 90s. We thought that that was the end of history. It turned out not to be, and it really takes an awful lot of power and thinking, and also wrestling both with the partners on your own level and with the political level if we want to move ahead. So I'll support that we take a look at the organizational issues, and again, we have a variety of opportunities where we can go in and support that kind of thing, because we want of course we want our money back, but we want it back based on that we actually had a successful drive for what we were looking for, a more sustainable daily life.
Thank you for coming in. A question from Louise Pied-Noir from Keolis. What do you expect from public transport operators regarding autonomous vehicles?
We haven't really thought about that topic yet. We have one example in Amsterdam where the GVB, that's the operator in concession Amsterdam, is starting a pilot this year with autonomous driving. But we don't have a specific ambition on that area yet. So.
I can say that in Oslo we have had actually several dialogue conferences like this on autonomous vehicles. At the first one there was a full crowded house like this and very few PTOs. But they've been signing in. I think they're understanding what's happening and want to play a role in this. But it's actually a better question to form to the PTOs. What role do they see in this? Because right now it's not the market that's only consisting of PTOs. It's a market that might consist of numerous other players that are not currently in the mobility market and other mobility market players today, like rental companies and things like that.
The transport on the last kilometer was an older dream, and we tried a lot of systems with cable cars, for example, in Paris too. And now we have autonomous shuttles. So we bought 2 of them last year, and we rent another one this year. So we have tested a lot of configuration on a bridge, on a bank, in a forest, in a park, and we are testing all the time this kind of shuttle. But today it's just a shuttle with just 6 meters long, as you have in this expo too. So today we wish to probably to develop as an operator the last kilometer. It's a new kind of offer, and with autonomous it works very well. And why not in the future have much more vehicles, larger, bigger, and on private lane probably first. And it's a new world. But for us, it's a very old dream to have an answer to respond to the last kilometer in transport. And we didn't do that before. And autonomous vehicles give us a new step into this opportunity to do that.
New question coming in by email from Hans-Peter Sundberg from NetBus. Why should the PTAs go for a battle on future market shares against new players and technologies that could perform perfectly well without the PTAs?
I'm not sure we should. We're here to provide in Ruters, we're here as a tool for our owners to sort of regulate this market, and we ask the market whether there is a role for us. And right now, both our customers and the players in the market have asked us to take that role. But that might change in 5 years. I don't know.
Which external or players would you see coming into the market which could challenge the established players? Do you see this evolution risk?
Yeah, you have this called the smiling curve. You know, in the middle, you're sort of you're mounting PCs and have a very, very low income or low profitability position. You own the technology or you own the customer position. Some companies in the world, among those, the 5 most valuable companies, owns both the technology and the customer position. I think they're all good candidates.
Further questions from
For those who don't know these companies, they're American platform companies, all of them. It's Google, it's Amazon, it's Apple. They're all fighting for this position.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I saw a hand over there, yes, and the microphone is arriving.
Yes, thank you. My name is Antonio Garcia, and I work for Avanza, one of the main private urban transport operator in Spain. The question is, we are talking about flexibility of new models of electricity and also autonomous vehicles, which brings to our minds and the person from Ruters has explained more flexibility in general. What's your view on how the impact of this flexibility in labor agreements, one of the main cost parties that all operators have, and we are, as operator, we are being challenged every day with this. And what do you think is the role also of the authorities and in general of the society of this flexibility that must be also introduced in the labor conditions and all this? Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking at a very challenging next decade. Trying to understand this technology, and again, nobody actually knows what's going to happen, but a lot of, right now, I think we're looking at the last maybe 10 to 15 years of people driving vehicles. In the meantime, for the first couple of years, at least maybe for the first 5 years, we're going to need a lot more bus drivers. Because in Oslo, the business is growing, and every day we need more bus drivers. And we're all going to tell them that their job might be over in 10 to 15 years, maybe even before that. We don't really know right now. And how do we actually manage that? And what do we do with the social responsibility and those employees when they actually face the end of their current career in their current job? I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for the world, not only in our industry, but in other industries is affected by automation as well. But we as an industry have to be prepared for this, and maybe we should look for bus drivers that are in the end of their careers instead of starting new ones.
How fast do you think that these developments will take?
If I could answer that question precisely, I will be much richer than I am today. But I've tried to understand it from talking to people that should know about it, and we're talking about, I think we have what's called L4 when it comes to automation, which is you can drive with some restrictions, but the car is automated, and the car is actually insured by the producer of the car. Will probably take place something between 2020 and 2023 is the best guess right now. And of course, how fast that is going to be transferred into the bus industry is also a question. But I don't think when it's a matter of security, when actually the cars drive safer than when with us on board driving them, I think the transition into the bus industry would go quite fast, because nobody would expect a bus to be less safe than a car.
Let's hear the views of the vehicle manufacturers on this. How fast will these developments take?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How fast do you think that the technological developments to see autonomous vehicles will take?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to answer that question. I mean, at the same time, I also say that, I mean, the investment we have done now, the industry in Euro 6, was the biggest in the history. We have put in billions of euro in Euro 6. And as soon as Euro 6 was released, then we're talking about electromobility. So, I mean, we are now in a big investment period for all this, including autonomous or whatever you like. So, I mean, and then we have now a very positive discussion with the European Commission, the DG Move, about, because they are claiming that it takes too long time to increase electromobility in the market, where we have a forecast of coming to some 5,000 buses 2025. And last year there was a registration of 250 buses or something like that. So, I mean, the pace now must go very quickly. So, I mean, we have a lot of pressure from let's say, the Commission to, let's say, accelerate, including all this type of discussions here with infrastructure, charging systems, different types of electromobility. And so, I mean, we are prepared to and we want that to happen. But it is not, in the old days, we answered for a diesel bus and that goes off. Now it's a more integrated system. We need to work together to get this going, because otherwise it will not work. And then we're sitting here with enormous investment from the industry. We have big investment from the public transport authorities and all that. So we have to work much more integrated and much more together now to get this going. That is our opinion.
Will there be implications for the body builders and trailer builders? Or will your business continue as before?
No, I won't something say anything else to this automated stories which I read in, because I'm very long involved already in that also. What we see, we have 5 levels of autonomous driving, and 3 is still with a driver, and then we got safety systems, and that will happen. It's already happening. A lot of coaches have already these systems like lane departure and adaptive cruise control. So we have already these parts of autonomous driving in our products, in trucks and in buses. That will continue and is already in the buses, so it will not come into the buses, but it's in the buses from all of us. The next steps to go without a driver is a very long way, I think, because we need 3 keystones there. First of all, we need very fast computers, because if everybody is on the road, we have to transfer so many data and we have to calculate so many data for the next mile we want to drive, because it will every time the next mile we have to make safe. So that takes complete new computers which are in development now, and they will not enter the market before 2020, I can tell you. The second step is we need 5G, because we need every mile a very stable network, and our network is not stable with 4G. You know, if you drive to Germany, your phone is every 200 kilometers out. You cannot have that on the road. And the third step is legislation, because then a software engineer has to decide which decision the vehicle has to make. And then this discussion you can find everywhere, which decision has the software to make. So there are 3 barriers there, and I think at least 2025 nobody will drive on a public road with a license on his plate on the road. And everything we see now is a very low mileage, no license, not certified on non-public roads. That is what we see now as tests, very valuable, but it will never come on the road and with license. Yeah. So there's the 3 things about automotive driving I want to say.
Thank you very much. More questions from the audience? That doesn't seem to be the case.
Can I just comment on that? 2025, that's in the middle of our next bus contract. That's not very far from here. So anything that happens before 2030 is, you know, compared to the development phase of this industry, is very, very fast. And of course, we don't really know when this is going to happen. And autonomous without any restrictions, that is probably the most challenging thing. But right now, a lot of our service today could be run with some restrictions. And of course, that's the reason why I said that the early 20s, you will see the introduction of this technology. And it could dramatically change the way we operate. And we have little time to prepare for it, because when it first going to happen, everybody says it's going to happen like an S-curve, and the technology is first available. It will be introduced very fast, and that's my worry. Whether it's happening in 2020 or 2023 is not really the case. It's when it happens, it's going to happen fast. That's going to be our challenge.
Yeah, but it's not on the vehicle side. The infrastructure of your city. The infrastructure of your city is your problem. You will get. You cannot do it in the current cities. So if the vehicles are there, you cannot drive through your cities with the infrastructure you have now. And how fast you can do that in your cities is really my question.
In this case, could you foresee contracts which allow the swapping of vehicles if there is a technological change in the middle of the contract?
That's why we're here, because, you know, since the contracts are so long, how could we make them in a way that we can actually adapt this technology? And my worry is, like I said several times, if this industry doesn't, somebody else might. And so if you're not prepared for this, somebody will come with this technology, if it exists, and implement it fast and might actually outcompete us. That's why that's what I'm preparing for, and I hope this industry will, take that challenge and will start tomorrow by, looking into the way we work, how we actually form our contracts, and start, adapting this technology and make sure that we sort of develop it together. And I think that is the key message here, that we actually have to sit down together and do this. If everybody sort of sits on their own cornerstone and wait for the other and wait for somebody else to pay, somebody else might finance it and introduce it and take our customers before we actually know how to react.
Can the solution come from the leasing companies or from the banks, EIB?
I think we have to agree on a sort of common understanding of what goes on around us. And based on that, we should have a strategy in how to work together and how to do this. And I'm not really, I'm quite optimistic because I see a lot of changes actually going on right now. And I want to invite those forces and those changes into cooperation with us.
Yes, being a pessimist or an optimist, that's a choice. We optimists have more fun while it goes on, whatever goes on. I don't have any particular views on automation other than this person asked what will happen when all the bicyclists realize that the car will stop when they drive out in front of it. We have a lot of bikes in Copenhagen, so I'm thinking a bit about that. But it brings me to another issue, which is the fast development of technology. As I said, I think 5 years ago, I wouldn't have expected that we were with such a mature technology as we have now. But there is still an awful lot going on. And there is probably a case for saying that the bus you buy now may be a stone around your neck in 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. When Movia made the choice of going in, that is the bus company in Copenhagen, when they went in, they set out in front, I'm sure we're going to waste money. I'm sure there will be technologies which are obsolete and so forth. And I think that is something that we have to live with in when we want to go ahead. And just say that is just a sunk cost that we take. But still, the people who go ahead now, they are much more apt for being able to take advantage of the coming technologies. So therefore, we shouldn't be burdened so much by, we should realize the cost, but we should not be burdened by that the first movers, they pay some extra price. If we were to wait for the perfect Apple, we would still have a landline in our office. Most people don't. We know that it will be obsolete in a few years. Still, we go ahead with it. Then one point on the issue of labor. Generally, you have people stay in their job. Drivers, there's often a very, very stable group there, but it's something like 15–20% up in and out of jobs every year. So I don't think that it shouldn't keep anybody from taking the great job of being a bus driver. That something will be happening all the years, even if Ruters' ideas of very fast-moving technology, I'm sure that there will be enough jobs for people to drive buses, and then some of them probably need to be stewards in your new 24-meter automatic vehicles down Karl Johan also.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I can only underline what you're saying, that we have to work together. And I mean, in the old days, we were sitting and waiting for the tenders to come out, and we were handing in an envelope. And now, this is what we want from the industry. Sit up front and discuss. And I mean, I can take an example from my hometown, Gothenburg, with this line 55, with electric buses, a consortium of the city, Västtrafik, Chalmers University, energy company, Volvo in this case, and a couple of other stakeholders, where we form this together for the city, for the air quality or whatever it is, or noise and so on. And I mean, that line is very profitable because it's a lot of people going there up and down. So there are examples of very successful installations, but it has to be together initially.
Any further questions from the audience? Please. coming.
Now, speaking in general, if you see, for example, in this country, in the Flanders area, where they have a low emission zone in Antwerp, and there will come one in Brussels now, they have noticed, it's maybe preliminary, but they have noticed that NOx and particles are not going down. So there is a need for a new public transport system, where there is more space for buses and other modes of transportation. And it's sometimes, it depends on the country, it's sometimes in the hands of the PTA to make that decisions and to ask to define the tenders in that way. What is your opinion about this?
We are organized and working based on the objectives of our owners, and their objectives are exactly the ones that you are describing. They want emissions down, not only carbon, but also the rest of the emissions. And I think even though I've been talking about a public transport system with less compromises, my personal view is there's still going to be some, and that comes to what actually goes on the surface. We have to move big masses of people in bigger cities under the surface, so we can actually use the land on the surface or other means than just moving people around, and that includes small pod cars or whatever. And to do that, you need somebody to regulate it, at least with the current business models. And that, I think, is the role of the PTA, both today and maybe even tomorrow.
Yes, please.
Hi. Hi, I'm Harold. I'm an industrial designer and also board member of PTA in the Stavanger region in Norway. I'm considering it's a really great initiative. You have this dialogue conference here, but to what extent are you going to have other dialogue conferences and other types of conferences like Slush or Web Summit or South by Southwest or something to kind of challenge other industries to cater for your needs?
I think this was a very good first try. Thank you very much for coming and staying, so many of you. We have also been streaming this on YouTube as a first one. I think that's also going to be repeated, so that people have to travel these long distances to actually take place. And we look into how can we make more interaction, not just asking questions, but actually how to build on this digital platform to actually to exchange information and work together. So we don't have to actually wait to 2 more years to come to Busworld to have this dialogue. So we're looking at how to continue to do that, and also look forward to having questions or remarks afterwards on our websites. What was good and bad with this session, and how could we actually continue to facilitate things like that to bring the partners in this business closer together.
Maybe one last question, which comes also by email from Vincent or Vincent Tran from Keolis. What will be the influence on leasing and bank conditions for fossil engine vehicles today, taking into consideration that reselling value will drop dramatically within a couple of years?
As I said, I believe that technology will develop a lot, and therefore the bus we buy today will, in a few years, be viewed as an expensive bus and not living up to today's standards. I'm pretty sure about that. And that is why that we must face that there is a cost of being an early mover in this area. Concerning the view from a bank, one thing is if we're going into this, there will be an issue of buses. As has been pointed out here also, there's also a big issue of infrastructure. And you can debate how much worth is it to have a collateral consisting of 10 charging stations in Stavanger or wherever if there aren't any buses running under them. So what we are looking into, and has been done several places, is that we look into that we believe there is a public service obligation on the part of the transport authority. That is then turned into a public service contract, and then it is the revenue stream, the secure revenue stream that we're looking at for being this, our collateral, so to speak. I mentioned earlier the issue of the contract length. When we started in Copenhagen, some lawyer type from EU had told that 4 years would be the maximum for a contract length. That has now developed to be often 6 years, 8 years, 6 plus some extra options and so forth. What we are in the process of doing is moving towards 12 years. And I think that is fair to say that you buy something, it will last at least 12 years. Why not make the whole contract be based on that? And that makes it easier from a banking point of view. It also makes it easier from an operator's point of view. Other cases would stand with an 8-year-old bus, and who wants to be mayor in the town where they introduce 8-year-old buses? Nobody really wants to do that. So I think that there's I think we can get into a situation where we have a more stringent line between the life length of the infrastructure and then how we finance it. Of course, there can be leasing institutions and so forth, but they will more or less face the same issue of old technology and who wants to do that. There is a car for hire company called Rent a Wreck. Most of the customers are less than 30 years old, and they thought it was for my son when I walked in there. But most people do not want that, and most politicians do not want old technology. So we have to face the fact, and then live with it for whatever time it takes.
I'm mindful of the time, but maybe playing the ball to the manufacturers. Would there be a role for the manufacturers to take the vehicles back? As a last question to finalize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a calculation, of course. It happens. I mean, it's from a case to case. But as I said, I mean, either we have a contract of 8 years and then maybe a buyback contract, or now we are offering, let's say, price per kilometer, and then it's our problem in the end. So case by case, yeah, possible.
Thank you. So we arrive at the end of this panel discussion. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to all the panelists. We have had very interesting insights into the operation of public transport buses, electric buses, looking into the future regarding autonomous vehicles, and we have come to more concrete examples of resale of vehicles, etc. So financing, and I think that we have had a very good discussion which has had different angles and hopefully interesting for the audience. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. It's been a very interesting debate. It's not over. The dialogue conferences will continue in some way or another. It's been very interesting. I know that some of you had to run away from your lunch. There is still some food up there, lunch. Grab it, eat it, and enjoy the rest of the day. I have a small gift for the panelists. It's, of course, a battery charger. Thank you.